G'day. That time of year, time to repack the wheel bearings, change brake pads, and give the undercarriage of the trailer a good working over. So what have I found? The boat gets a fair bit of use in summer, and despite the fact that we give it a good wash down when we get home every time we've used it, ultimately we're dipping all of this drive line, well, not really drive line, but we're dipping all of these wheels and brakes assemblies into the water and then leaving it with salt on it to bake on for 10 hours before we then put it in the water again, then drag it back to wherever we are, home or wherever we're staying, and then give it a hose off. So we've got about 900 hours on the boat in just on 4 years, and these hubs and discs are looking a bit ordinary. So they're all looking the same here. These discs are all rusted, really due for replacement. If I put new pads in here, these are just going to chew the brake pads out in a few hundred kilometres because the discs are so rough. So I've got one spare disc, and I've spoken to the guys at Easytow today, and they're sending me another 3 hubs today. So I sort of think for the amount of use it gets, if I get 3 years out of these hubs, I'm probably going to be doing well. There is a different hub I can get where it's a floating disc and a separate hub, which I might move to in the future, but I already had one of these hubs as a spare, so I've got another 3, so I put these on for another 3 years or so, get more use out of them, and then I'll move to a different setup. The pads, the biggest problem is the brake calipers aren't floating. So this is the outside pad, which is totally worn down to the metal, which I knew, and the inside's got plenty of meat left on it. Obviously, but it's uneven in terms of how it's worn. They'll get replaced totally, and I need to get the bolts on these calipers greased right so that the hubs can float properly and I get more even brake pad wear and don't get this sort of thing happening within a few hundred kilometres. The rest of the setup looks pretty good. Inside the hubs there's virtually no water in them, so the rest of the the stub axles are clean. These brake caliper carriers are looking pretty rusty, but I'll still get a while out of them before I'd replace them. I've pushed the pistons back. I've got effectively a woodworking G-clamp that I've customised to use for that. You can see here these bearings are looking pretty clean. Like there's been maybe a touch of water in there, but nothing substantial, and the bearing surfaces look quite good. I will replace those bearings. They're 3 years old now, and seeing the fact I'm putting new hubs in, I've got a spare set of bearings there, so I'll put spare bearings in. So I'll keep you updated as I go along. Okay, so getting ready to put my one spare hub on that I have at the moment. So there it is. So pack the bearing in there. Plenty of Castrol premium heavy duty grease. Used to be known as Castrol marine grease or Castrol APXT back in the old days when I was a young bloke and flogged oil for a living. Really good water resistant grease. I've got new seals to put on here. These seals have done a very good job on the old hubs, and so I've got no hesitation in using the same brand and type of seal again. But they are brand new. I wouldn't reuse the old ones. I think when it just comes to this, you're better off just going to new stuff all the time. The one thing I could have probably reused if I was really desperate was the bearings, but they've been in there for nearly 4 years. Had plenty of work, and I had a spare set already on the shelf here, so I'll just put them in and I'll be good for another 4 years. So clean those up completely. We'll put this one hub on this afternoon, and when the others turn up from Easytow, we'll fit them. Easytow have sent me the tracking details already this afternoon. Only ordered off them less than an hour ago. Great service from them, and I'm sure they'll turn up before the end of the week. We'll get this all finished and we'll be ready to fish again for next summer. Okay, we've got this bearing, this seal ready to pack. So in the back I've packed the bearing full of grease. got the seal on there, and then we'll just tap that on. So I've got a bit of turpentine, good bit of hardwood, and then just give it a few light taps with a hammer just to seat that seal evenly, and then it'll be ready to put onto the stub axle. It's going nicely. A little bit more. It's pretty good. That's seated nicely. So then, you know, I've got that seated. We can come to the front and pack the bearing at the front. I subscribe to the theory that too much grease in here is never enough, because the more grease you've got in there, the less air and the less chance of water getting in. So I'll just dip this race into the tub of grease completely. Just totally cover it. Back over there. Totally smear this into the race. These are good quality Japanese bearings. Plenty of grease on that inner ring. Seat that on there. And I'll probably stuff a bit more grease into the gap between the two bearings, and then it'll be ready to place onto the stub axle. I've got no problem if it spits a heap of grease out the front, because the more grease in here the better. I'm doing that in 30 years of towing boats around. I've never had a failure. That. Stick this on. You wonder what we did before Bunnings sold microfiber towels for $12 for a packet. An old beach towels come in handy for jobs like this. Towel here has been used on Avalon for many years. It was initially a beach towel, then it became a fish towel, and it's finally so worn out it's become a garage towel that's going to be used for putting on the ground when doing wheel bearings for a few years before it eventually gets thrown out. Okay, so we need the washer. Don't ever forget the washer, and the castellated nut, and the split pin. What will happen here is I'll do this up, and generally when I do these, I do them, and especially when I've got a new seal like this and new bearings, when I've got the whole lot done, I'll tighten them up, tow the boat around the block a couple of times, come home, jack it up on each side, make sure the nuts at the right done up enough, just so there's just a tiniest little bit of play on those bearings without it being too tight. Sometimes you wonder whether it should be another 1/6 of a turn tighter or looser. But as long as it's in a place where it's just a little bit of play and the wheel's going to spin relatively freely, that's fine, before you are ready to sort of forget about it for 6 months or so. Okay, got the caliper on, new pads, freed up those bolts. So pity it won't always stay this way. Rolling beautifully, no binding between the pad and the caliper. Looks fantastic. If I don't ever put the trailer in the water, it'll stay that way. So that's one done. 3 to go. Wait for those hubs to come from Easytow, which they will in the next couple of days. Throw this wheel on. That's it for today. I'll shoot a bit more in a few days' time when the hubs come, and on some of the other work I've got to do in the next few days. See ya.